I think you can see me now. Would love to hear somebody say they see me and you see the PowerPoint, because it's very, very important part. Awesome. Great. Thank you so much. Sorry for that inconvenience. Just so you know, I've been doing this for 20 plus years. This is something where it takes time to understand all of this information. If for some reason along the way you say, whoa, this is a lot, or I really didn't understand that piece, just so you know, we're not going to give you all this information in 1 hour and then say, sorry. We're going to say, you are welcome to reach out to me or anyone to ask questions. We will not leave you hanging, and we will make sure you get all of your questions answered. So just feel free to ask questions along the way, of course, and at the end, but also when you go home this evening, or you're at home and you're thinking and you say, I really have questions about this, and you can write them down, and we will make sure that you have the right resources to get that information and the right people to talk to. That being said, one of the first things we talk about is capacity. The reason I bring this up is capacity really means that you have the ability to complete the documents that we're talking about, the advanced directives and the MOLST, the Maryland Orders for Life-Sustaining Treatments. You have the capacity. And we want to take the opportunity to capture this moment and give you the voice that you will have for the rest of your life, regardless if you do have the ability to speak for yourself. So now is the time to get everything in order. And it doesn't have to be in your 80s or 90s. I have these forms completed. I did them in my early 30s. I'm now 43. And I can't teach this stuff if I didn't have it done. I would be like false advertising. So I want you to know that I got my advanced directives, the ones I'm sharing with you today, through the Maryland State Attorney General. And they are free, which I will reiterate again. And, you know, this is the time to get our documents in order, because we can. You're here to learn about this, because we can get these documents done from your directive. And the only people in the state of Maryland that can complete an advanced directive is the person themselves, you. So I want to make sure that you know that. Okay. So again, if you have any questions along the way, please let me know. But this piece is really important, because once somebody no longer has capacity, which I can imagine you've met somebody along the way, or you have people that you've cared for in the past that no longer have the ability to complete a document, maybe because they have a diagnosis of dementia, or because they just don't have the full ability to do it because of maybe a major medical condition that's caused an inability to do so. I don't want that to happen to you. That's why you're here. And I think Carroll Lutheran giving you that opportunity to have this conversation before it's too late for any of us, and to know that this is your right, I think it's wonderful. And I think Carroll Lutheran should be applauded for that, because I don't do this with many facilities, and I think it's wonderful. So I want to make sure we're aware of what kind of roadblocks there are that are potentially could cause somebody to seem like they can't do it, but they really can. And this is really where I come in about advocating for my clients, for people like yourself. You know, sometimes, anybody here not hear as well as you used to? Huh? Yeah, we all, as we age, our hearing isn't always as great. Not for everybody, but it is a possibility. Sometimes hearing deficits can cause people to think that they are not capable of completing these documents. So we need to advocate for ourselves. Same with visual deficits, language barriers. Just because you speak a different language, or maybe English isn't your first language, or you have trouble speaking, maybe there was an event in your life where, you know, you had, it affected your speech. That does not mean that you can't complete these documents. Time of day, I know some of us are exhausted in the morning. Maybe in the evening, we're exhausted from the day. Maybe that's not the right time to do these directives or to fill out a MOLST. So I just want you to know, these are the things we need to consider. We want to make sure that it's the right time of day. And then approach. Of course, this is a tough topic. This is a heavy topic. I want to make sure that you all are aware that you have the right to ask as many questions as you want. You have the right to change it as time goes on, because that is your right. We feel a certain way one day, we might feel a certain way another day. And that is an awesome thing about advanced directives in Maryland and the MOLST, which is the orders, is that actually it's not set in stone, and we have the right to make changes as long as we're capable of doing so. So right now is the time. Is there anything else you can think of that could be a roadblock to you completing these documents that you want to share? You can type in the chat feature. You're welcome to. Let me know. I'd love to hear if you have any thoughts that we can share with everybody here. Okay, and you're more than welcome to do that, and I can always move forward and check it out. So what happens if somebody does lack capacity? If someone does all of a sudden, let's say I have my advanced directives and they don't have capacity anymore, the first thing we look for is the healthcare agent. Then we look for, like, is there a guardian or is there a surrogate? So basically the healthcare agent is what we're going to talk about in the advanced directives. It's who we appoint to make decisions if we're no longer capable of making them for ourselves. And that person is somebody you're going to appoint on your own. No one can appoint that for you. That's not legal in the state of Maryland. So you are the only one who can appoint it. So that means you trust them. You trust that individual. You've appointed them because you believe that they would make and carry out your decisions. Guardian is a different way. You have to go through the courts. Some people who don't do healthcare agents, you will have to go and get a guardian potentially if someone needs to oversee your care and you haven't appointed. And a surrogate in the state of Maryland is actually an individual in that we're not going to go into too much detail, but we can talk about it. It's who will be appointed or who will be the person if you never appointed someone. So this is why it's so important to appoint someone yourself while you're capable, so that your wishes are going to be carried out by the people you trust. And there's a lot of details in there. If you have questions, we can do it separately because I don't want to overwhelm you with a lot of information. But certainly the whole point of this slide is that appointing someone that you choose, that you trust, and you know will carry out your wishes in your best interest is why we are having this discussion today, because it's so important to have it. It doesn't mean your end of life. It doesn't mean that you're not well. It just means putting it down on paper. And I, again, did it when I was 34 years old, because God forbid, something can happen to us anytime, as we all know. And I just want to make sure that you have the tools to put down what your wishes are if, God forbid, you were in need of medical decisions you could no longer make. Any questions? This is just a little bit into what we just spoke about before. You know, if there are advanced directives, we want to make sure we are asking that question. Do you have advanced directives? And making sure that you are providing advanced directives to people if you've already completed them, of course. And then, of course, we need to look at if there's any guardianship documents. And we only want to go to the surrogate decision route, meaning who is the highest in the hierarchy? Would it be, is there a husband, a wife? Are there adult children? We'd have to go through that to see who the decision maker would be if there were no appointed healthcare agent, no advanced directives from a medical perspective. So it's a lot of discussions, and this is just for your understanding, and just so you know what the state of Maryland looks at. They do look at, if you don't have an advanced directive, they look at this as the hierarchy. And I want you to know this because adult children have equal authority. So I'm giving you that as an example, because if anybody here has more than one adult child, that means they have to be 18 or over. You all know that there's a potential where sometimes your eldest daughter isn't necessarily as comfortable with making medical decisions for you as your middle daughter. So you might say, you know, I have 3 daughters, but my middle daughter is the one who's really good at making decisions. So I'm going to appoint her in my healthcare agent document. So that supersedes surrogacy, because this is the hierarchy we go to if there are no documents. So we would have to allow all adult children, they're all have equal authority. So everybody in this category, no matter how many there are, have equal authority. And so there's a process that goes into it. It is a possible situation. We do it all the time, but just for your knowledge, it is just better that you appoint the child that you would want. You appoint the sibling that you would want. You appoint the parent that you want, or the friend, or another type of relative, a niece, a nephew, so that there's no red tape. There's nothing we have to jump over, no extra documentation we have to get. Your wishes are to have this person, and you document it, and we fill it out correctly, and we can actually focus on your care versus who your decision maker is. Any questions? I know that's a lot. And this is just some more information on surrogacy. And I put this up here for you to read and reread. You'll have the PowerPoint, just to know that because they all have equal authority, and as we all know, families sometimes don't always have the same perspective on what should happen with mom. And so this is why it's so helpful to create an advance directive. It's so important. And it's our job as healthcare professionals to offer it to you and make sure you have that opportunity. But this is a great opportunity just to know that we want to make sure that your wishes are honored. And that is who you would want to make decisions and what your decisions would be, which we'll talk about a little bit more. So what is an advance directive? And as Chris had said earlier, some people think the advance directive and the MOLST form are the same thing, and they're not. So first, we're going to talk about an advance directive. An advance directive is an if-then document. And I call it that because it makes it a lot more easy to understand. So the document appoints a healthcare agent, somebody who you trust, your husband, your wife, your partner, your friend, your daughter. If I am no longer capable of making decisions for myself, then I want my daughter, Sally, to make decisions for me, okay, or on my behalf. So if I were in a certain condition, which we'll talk about, then these are the type of medical treatments that I would or would not want. Okay. And so this is a document that helps you to keep your voice active, even when you don't have one. Maybe because you can't verbalize it, or because you do have a cognitive impairment, memory issues, where you just don't understand. You can't really participate in these discussions anymore. But because when you were well, you were putting things down on paper, and you can put anything you want down on an advance directive. It's a directive to say, this is what I want at my end of life. And that doesn't minimize it to just medical. Some people might say in a separate area, please make sure my dog is with me and cuddling me or visiting me. Or if you have one, of course. Some people have said to me, please do not put socks on my feet at my end of life. And this sounds silly sometimes, but some people are really sensitive to that kind of thing. And you can put anything you want. Your voice is so important. Please make sure my children surround me. Please make sure that I am visited by clergy, and be specific about it. But truthfully, when you're in a certain condition, you also have the right to talk about what your wishes are if you were in a condition such as an end stage condition, which we'll talk about, a terminal condition, or a persistent vegetative state, which are 3 conditions identified by the state of Maryland as what we put in our Maryland advanced directives, which we'll talk about. One of the things I want to reiterate, and I might say it again, is this is a gift. An advanced directive is a gift. Sometimes we think this is very hard to do, and you are absolutely right. It was hard for me to complete mine, harder than I thought it's easier for me to talk about it. It's easier for me to help someone else. But when I did it, it really made it real. But it doesn't, we're not doing it because we're end of life. You don't want to do it in a crisis situation. You want to do it when you're well, so you can think clearly. You want to do it when you're well, so you know, what is it that I would want under these circumstances? And you can discuss it with your physician. You can discuss it with clergy. You can discuss it with people that you trust. It doesn't have to be filled out immediately. So we'll give you that opportunity as well. But this is a gift. And as I'll say again, there's studies out there that show that it reduces depression and grief on the family when they have these documents to be able to carry out for their loved ones. So they don't have to make the choice on their behalf, which is so hard to do, knowing that my mom says this is what she wants. And I'm able to give that to my loved one because this is what they want and I'm honoring them. It makes it a little easier during difficult times. So that's really important. Any thoughts or questions? I hope I'm speaking slow enough. I'm trying. I tend to speak a little quicker and I'm doing my best. So if anybody has any questions, please write them down. We can talk about it at the end, or we can certainly discuss it as you want to bring it up. So healthcare advanced directives, as we're talking about, we're speaking specifically about healthcare. In the state of Maryland, it's good to know that you don't need a notary. A lot of people have this misconception of needing to jump through hoops to get this done. In fact, you don't need anybody special or specific to to witness your signature or the fact that you've appointed someone. It has to be two people that actually aren't your appointed healthcare agents, and a person that is not going to benefit from you financially. So I always say, if you think about it, the mailman and the Amazon delivery man as an example, not really, but I mean, technically you could, those people will not have any interest in your finances unless they're related or healthcare agents. And so that it has to be two witnesses that aren't related to you, any type of benefit financially. And the two witnesses cannot be a healthcare agent or an alternate healthcare agent. Okay. So, and you don't have to use the form I provided to you. Sometimes there are other forms through different lawyers if you choose to go to a lawyer. There also is the 5 wishes, which is another document that you can get online as well. And so this is optional, the Maryland state form, but it is free. And that's the one I used because going to a lawyer can be quite expensive. And so knowing that you have this document to utilize for healthcare decisions and that it's free, it can ease your mind. And a lot of people have said to me in the past, I don't want to do it because I'm fearful of the expense. Well, have no fear. This is actually a free document and you have the link to it and you will have opportunities to print it out. And it also has directions. So I would highly recommend that you would, if you're interested, to print it out or look at it online with your loved ones, with your family, and read it together and digest it together. And then of course, call me with any questions, or anybody at Carroll Lutheran or anybody who is knowledgeable about this topic. If you have a healthcare advanced directive from another state and you want to update it, that's great. You can do that. Out of state forms are valid in the state of Maryland as long as they're valid in the state they came from, just as an FYI. And you would have to know if it was valid there. You can, I can help you find that information out. So the living will and healthcare instructions, if I don't have capacity and I am in a specific condition, we need to know, if you're in a certain condition, what do you want? If I'm in a terminal condition, then this is what the wishes would be. And this is part of your advanced directive. The advanced directive is advanced directions. And living will, this is not the will where you're giving away. This isn't like the estate planning or anything like that. This is more, if I'm in a terminal end stage or a persistent vegetative state, which we'll talk about the definitions, then this is what I would want. Some people say, I want to be kept comfortable and let nature take its course. Some people say, I want everything done. It really is a personal decision, and I highly recommend that this decision is discussed with family members. It is not a burden. It is a very important conversation, and I'm going to give you a tool for that as well. Sometimes the document in the Maryland state documents, it gives you two choices. One, I want them to make the decisions how I state them, and some trust their healthcare agents enough, and they have a clause that says that I give my healthcare agent flexibility to make decisions regardless of what my living will says. So to take what I say about if I'm in a terminal, end stage, or persistent vegetative state into account, but I trust that in the moment, if there's a situation that makes more sense for them to make a different decision, I trust them to do so. So it gives you that flexibility, because sometimes we can't predict everything, and it gives you a little level of comfort knowing that it doesn't have to be so set in stone, even when your voice isn't being heard, that you can talk to your daughter or your cousin and say, I know I said I don't want anything, but if something will help me feel less pain, or if you think it's a good idea to try something when I'm in a condition, please go ahead and do so. I trust your judgment. And so you have a little bit of flexibility there, which is very easy to read once you get the directives in your hand that I've provided you. It'll make more sense when you see the different clauses. So again, when you read it, you're more than welcome to call me to ask more questions, because I guarantee you'll have them. Okay. I apologize about how the words came out. It's just the way that it turned over. So this is called end stage condition. And by law, these three conditions are in the advanced directive. So you will see them, and I want you to know what it means, because that's very important to understand, because once you know what the definitions are, you can say, make a better judgment of what you would want under those circumstances, or at least have a conversation with your loved one. So it is defined by law as an advanced, progressive, and irreversible condition. Severe and permanent deterioration indicated by incompetency and complete physical dependency. Those two things are very important. If you're capable, but you're dependent, you don't meet end stage condition. So you have to be completely unable to make your own decisions and completely dependent on someone to take care of you. And they also look at that the treatment of the irreversible condition, whatever that may be, would be medically ineffective. It wouldn't be in the best interest to continue to do life-sustaining treatments. It wouldn't make a difference. In fact, it would probably cause more harm than good. So this is why the definition of end stage is important, because some people can say, well, what if I have end stage? Some people have end stage renal disease. That doesn't necessarily meet the criteria for end stage condition when it comes to the law and the advanced directives. So again, if you have a question specifically on that, we will talk about it. You are welcome to ask. This is what they define as a terminal condition. It's incurable. There's no recovery regardless of life-sustaining procedures. Death is imminent. It's going to happen regardless. And the life expectancy is less than 6 months. And so that's, again, the definition of terminal. And then persistent vegetative state is something that we don't see very often. It's not as often, but it happens. You're going to see no awareness of self, only reflex activity, low level condition. The good thing to know is that you have to wait a medically appropriate period of time. We don't just diagnose this right away, because some people could have a medical event that could turn around. And also the physicians one of them has to be a neurologist, a neurosurgeon, or somebody who is an expert in cognitive functioning. So it is very important to know that an expert is going to evaluate you for this condition, or ourselves, right? So when does a healthcare agent have authority? This is an important piece. Remember, we talked about this really quickly. We said either upon signing, or if two doctors say that you're unable to make decisions, you have the right to determine when you will appoint a healthcare agent to have authority. That is, there are two clauses in this actual document, and it is your determination how you want that to go. And, you know, if you do complete it with a lawyer, you can say it exactly how you want. I see when I am deemed unable by two physicians, meaning the two physicians have certified that I'm no longer capable of making decisions. Or when your PCP, primary care physician, determines I'm unable to make healthcare decisions. Sometimes you just need one doctor to do it. When my physician deems me incapable, and when I'm in a terminal condition. So there's a lot of wording that really make a big difference. So we want to make sure if you are going to a lawyer that you're reading this when it comes into effect, because it does make a difference when your daughter can start making decisions for you. So it's important to know that these words, sometimes the end, when end, where it says when deems me incapable, and when I'm in terminal condition, that end means both have to come into play before someone can actually be part of your decision, make your decisions. So it's important to be mindful of that. Sometimes it's when the document is signed, knowing that you trust them once it's signed. That means once I'm no longer capable, then I give them full authority. The truth is, it's very important to know, just because you have a healthcare agent document and it says when the document is signed, does not give anybody the right to make decisions for you when you're still capable. So even though you're giving them that document authority, the authority once it's signed, does not mean that automatically you don't have a voice. It means you still have that voice until you can't anymore. And it's obvious because they're going to get that evaluation done. So just make sure you know. I have a advanced directive, and I'm 43 years old, and I feel, you know, still have capacity on most days. And so right now, I would hope that everybody would come to me because I'm still capable of making my own decision. If they don't, then what would happen is they would be putting me in a situation where they're going against or not talking to the right person, which is not the right thing. So we still have to advocate that the individual, no matter how old, there's no age in the law, 80, 90, 100, 110. If you're still capable of making your own decisions, you are still the one to make the decisions unless you choose to have somebody support you. Okay. So does anybody see the benefits that we've talked about for advanced directives? Does anybody want to type in the chat feature or unmute themselves, raise your hand and just say, do you that you see the benefits of doing an advanced directive? Are there other benefits that you've thought of along the way or that you've learned today that would make you want to do an advanced directive? Any thoughts on that? Thought we could have some open discussion if you're interested. So if you think you have some benefits, write them down. Write down some of the benefits you think. And that way it can remind you of why this is something that would be in your best interest or someone else's best interest. And I think it's very important to consider what those benefits are. And we've talked a lot about them, but I just thought maybe you would want to say what you think the benefits are. Hi, does someone want to speak? Okay. Okay. Somebody actually just unmuted themselves. So if you can mute yourself, that would be great. Thank you. So we're going to talk about the Maryland MOLST now that we've done an overview of the advanced directives, the Maryland advanced directives. These are here and now orders. So we're not talking about for the future. We're talking about today. Why do we want that? Because today we need to know what our wishes are. If God forbid something were to happen where we went into cardiac arrest or we needed to go to the hospital, what would your wishes be today, right now? And so the Maryland MOLST came out in October of 2013, and it is used in the state of Maryland in facilities such as hospitals, especially if you're going to a facility like an assisted living, a nursing home, hospice. The primary cares are very aware of it. And so there's specific, and dialysis, excuse me, that was the one I missed, see? And so these forms are supposed to be allowing you to make your decisions, what your wishes are today, not if you're in a terminal end stage or persistent vegetative state, because that sometimes doesn't happen for a very long time. But just because you're not in one of those three conditions doesn't mean that you would want to be resuscitated in your current state, in your currently. Just because you might not want to be resuscitated when you're terminal or end stage doesn't mean you wouldn't want that. Maybe you would want to be resuscitated in this current time, which is okay. And we're going to learn a little bit more about the MOLST so you understand it. You do have a copy of it. And this form, it looks overwhelming, but that's okay because you have a copy and you have the right to look at it. I also gave you a worksheet, which we'll talk about briefly. That is actually something that helps you work through the orders for life-sustaining treatments, these medical orders. And it's not mandatory to use. You don't have to use it, but it's a good discussion tool for you and your family. So the important part of the MOLST is up here when it says certification for the basis of the orders. That means, who did I speak to? And we want to speak to you. We want to know that we spoke to you. And if we do speak to you, this document is portable and enduring. So that means that it can go with you no matter where you go, to the hospital. It works in Walmart. It works wherever you are, meaning if God forbid we had to call the EMS team because you fell or something happened, a medical event while you're out and about, if you have this form, it will be honored by EMS. The EMS in state of Maryland are very aware of what it says, what your wishes would be if God forbid you went into cardiac arrest. So there's a team of people, healthcare professionals across the state of Maryland that know this form to honor your wishes. And that is the goal. We want to make sure that you're treated the way you would want to be if God forbid something were to happen to you today. And so it offers you information about what your wishes are. And I won't go into every detail because it's a lot, but I certainly will, if you want me to at the end, if you have questions about it. What I recommend is that you look at it and you read it. I'm going to give you the worksheet and you can take it to your primary care physician. You can talk about it with your family, read it yourself if you're interested, doing it by yourself, and determine what it is that you would want. And again, it's not set in stone. So if you determine what you want today, in a week or a month or a year from now, you can change that if your condition changes or your decision changes. So nothing is set in stone. So again, we talked about the certification for the completion of the MOLST, which is important. And it is important to know that who it is that we talk to. So this, if you look at this, we want to talk to you, the patient. We want to make sure that we get your voice on that MOLST if we can. However, if for some reason we can't talk to you, there is a line for the healthcare agent as named in the advanced directive, which is number 2, bullet point number 2. And this is the person you appointed. So of course, as you see on the MOLST, it talks about a guardian, if there was a guardian, if no advanced directive was appointed, or they would talk about the surrogate, which we talked about briefly. And certainly you can go back and look on the slides to see that hierarchy. I don't want to overwhelm you. It's a lot of information. And sometimes we just go on the instructions, which is like your living will in the advanced directive, or other legal authority, which is another discussion for another time. But certainly what we want to focus on here is, obviously, if you want to do the MOLST, if you're moving into Carroll Lutheran or you live there, to have one there. It's a great opportunity to know your wishes, to think about them and make sure that everyone's aware so that no matter where you are, your wishes are going to be honored. And that's important. Sometimes as we get older, I didn't learn until I started aging a little bit older. I realized that we think about death in a different way. We think about end of life in a different way. We're able to conceptualize it because we've seen it. We know people who've gone through it, and we know that we wouldn't want to do certain things. We wouldn't want to suffer or certain treatments, or we want all of these things. So we need to make sure that we put it down on paper and make sure that we make everyone possible aware and have it handy so that we can honor your wishes. Like I said, it's a portable and enduring medical order. So you can do it once and it never has to change unless there's a change and you are no longer capable and there's a healthcare agent and they say, okay, according to the living will, when she's in this condition, she doesn't want any life-sustaining treatments. So they can change your MOLST according to your advance directive and through the direction of the person you appointed on the advance directive. It has to be signed and dated for validity in the state of Maryland. So just make sure it's signed and dated. Best practice is to fill out the bottom of the form entirely, both sides, first and second page. And again, like I said earlier, once going into a nursing home, assisted living, hospice, home health, or dialysis, that is where the Maryland law states it is important. We have to complete them. So that's why Carroll Lutheran has said, this is an important discussion, a necessary discussion. And the state of Maryland put this out there to give you a voice and to make sure that we're honoring you the best that we can and treating you with dignity, no matter what stage of life that you're in. And best practice should be all PCPs, all primary care physicians should be discussing this with older adults. Again, you can complete the MOLST if you are capable. So again, I always recommend that. It guides others on the individual's plan of care in the here and now, like we said. And, you do have the right to decline to participate in the MOLST, which I don't recommend. But if you do, just so you know, you will have all treatments done. There is a line that says, the person indicated they don't want to discuss it, and you will be resuscitated. You will have all treatments unless you indicate otherwise. So it's really important that we have this discussion so that your wishes are honored and that we don't have to go by default and do everything to you if you're not interested in that. So if you're not interested right now, and maybe you want to revisit in a couple months after you think about it, just make sure you know that that might be a discussion that's going to happen again. It's very important that we do that. That's our job, is to make sure that you have the right to have that conversation more than once. And then you will get a copy of it. You're not left out of it. Just so you know, all these conversations, the MOLST and advanced directive, as long as you're capable, you are very much involved in this conversation. You are very much involved in this plan of care development. And you are going to have copies of it. You can review it as you need it. And if you ever get it done by your primary care physician in the community, it still will work at Carroll Lutheran. And just so you know, it's not, and they don't expire. So if you did it already, or you plan to do it before you move in, just know that it will be okay. It can be done by a different doctor as long as they're Maryland doctors, and that's okay. And if you want to redo it with the team at Carroll Lutheran, excellent. There's nothing wrong with that. Maybe you say, I trust these new healthcare professionals, and I want to have a conversation with my new doctor. Nothing wrong with that. So you have a lot of flexibility in making this decision. Again, the EMS team, the team that comes and gets you 911, they only follow the page 1. They can't read advanced directives, so the first page has to be filled out by law, and they're going to follow whether you're yes to CPR or no to CPR. And it's really important that you have that. Otherwise, they're just going to assume you are a full code, which means they would do everything for you. And that's why it's important to have a MOLST and an advanced directive, because we can't utilize an advanced directive in a crisis situation. As you can imagine, there's a lot of detail, and having to read it during a crisis situation is too much. So that's why we want to do both, to make sure we can honor your wishes in the here and now, and of course, if then situation. Okay. Sorry. Okay, and then you know that it's important that the physician or the nurse practitioner or the physician's assistant, the people who are reviewing this with you, they are the one who are responsible for the content. So make sure you ask the questions with them and make sure what your wishes are make sense to them as well. And just make sure there's no, the MOLST has to be completed with you and signed once you're done. Okay. If you feel, this is really important, and this is a really important piece. If for some reason you say, I don't want to choose about dialysis right now, or I don't need a tube feeding right now, and I'm not concerned right now, or blood transfusions, I'm not concerned right now, you don't have to answer them. That is still a valid form. but you can either leave it blank and it's still valid, or you can put a line through it if that makes you feel better. You don't, if it's nothing relevant to your current condition, you don't have to discuss it now. But if something comes up where you're having trouble swallowing or something happens, a major medical event, they might have to review it with you at that time. Again, we do recommend that the clinician, the doctor, nurse practitioner, the physician's assistant, they initial your wishes. Okay, this isn't a form that is filled out by you; it is filled out with you, and the clinician needs to initial all of the wishes or all your choices, and then the clinician will sign it. Okay, when do we review a MOLST? It's really up to you if you want to change it, if you have a different thought, but oftentimes it's done annually, quarterly if necessary. If you transfer to another facility, it should be done on admission, on discharge, significant change in health condition, change in capacity may be better. Sometimes people do better when they go into a nice place like Carroll Lutheran, or sometimes they decline as time goes on. Or if you change your wishes. So there's a lot of times where we review this. It's not like you choose it and then it sits there and you worry that you made the wrong decision and you'll never have it discussed again. This is something that we should be reviewing as needed and upon your wish. So that is a good to know that certainly it will not be just put in a chart and left to be used for the rest of your life. That's not how it works. And you do have the right to change your mind at any time if you have the capacity to do so. Okay. I just want to say one thing, that if you do a new MOLST, just for your knowledge, there is a law that states we have to void the old MOLST so that it would be put away and your new one would be on the chart. So we wouldn't mistake your old orders for your new one. So there is a process for that. And that is important to know so that you don't, I know some of you are on here probably, had a job where you were in control of a lot of documents and such, and knowing that you have a new order, the question could be, well, what happens to my old order? What if it gets mixed up? And just so you know, there is a voiding process that is by law mandatory. And so that is something that we do to keep the records separate and make sure that your only document that is available to the team is your current MOLST. There is a MOLST worksheet. The MOLST worksheet is, it's not mandatory, okay? So this is optional. But I provided it to you just if you're having trouble understanding or working through the actual MOLST form. And this is, I want to make sure you know that it is not an advanced directive or a medical order form. This is just a worksheet that you can mark up, you can review with your family, read it over and over for yourself, and then your information that you choose, the choices that you make will be transferred onto the actual MOLST form. So it is helpful to know that there is this opportunity, because some people say, well, I'm just not ready to put the information on the MOLST, which you can take an actual MOLST form and mark it up and use it and get a new one when you're ready. This just gives a little bit more information than the MOLST itself. So just an FYI, you're welcome to use it or you don't have to, okay? But it is a great discussion tool for families. So when you go into Carroll Lutheran, if you're lucky, sounds like an amazing community, you come with the MOLST. That's really important. Or admission, we start with the MOLST and we offer or request those advanced directives because we want to make sure that we're caring for you and taking care of you from head to toe. And there's so many ways that we need to care for you. And there's so many opportunities at Carroll Lutheran. But one of them is to make sure that, God forbid something were to happen, what will your wishes be? And that MOLST and advanced directive is really an opportunity to give you the tools and also the voice, just in case you are not able to provide that voice to them. One of the things we don't talk about enough is, and I can imagine you go on outings a lot, right? This MOLST form goes with you. It has to go with you. Why? Because your wishes should be carried out, whether you're at Walmart, whether you're at Target, at the movies, you're going to see Christmas lights, whatever the case may be. That MOLST form should go with you so that your wishes are being honored everywhere. If you go home with your family for the weekend, you take a trip, make sure you have that MOLST form. It'll be honored in another state. They're familiar with it. They might, if you for some reason go out of state, they would potentially change it to their state form. But just so you know, this MOLST form is very important to stay with you no matter what. So what does that mean? We want to make sure that we don't have all of these documents locked in a safe deposit box. The amount of people that say, oh, I have an advance directive, I have a MOLST, but they're in my safe deposit box. Unfortunately, when we are in a situation where we have those documents need to be handy. If we go to the hospital or we end up going to a rehab center or we go to Carroll Lutheran, those are really important documents to keep with us and to provide. We want easy access. So we want to make sure those documents, your family have them, your physicians have them, Carroll Lutheran has them, and we want to keep them behind our bed or in the refrigerator or not in the refrigerator, on the refrigerator. And I can imagine that Carroll Lutheran might have some practices as well or recommendations. Make sure you advocate for yourself and know that your wishes should be honored and can change over time. So I'm empowering you with these documents to not only give a gift to your family, but give a gift to yourself. Even though this is such a daunting conversation at times, we all know this is part of life. And I enjoy talking about this, although a lot of people don't, because it really is important. It's something that we have to remind ourselves that these documents can be very heavy at times, but once we do them and we realize they're in place, it can take a lot off your shoulders and also off of your family's shoulders. And another thing I hear all the time is I don't want to be a burden to my family. This is very common. It's actually one of the most common things I hear. And part of giving them this gift takes a lot of burden off of them. Role reversal is one of the things we talk about when it comes to a child helping a parent or a niece helping an aunt. In my case, I'm actually a caregiver and I do all this for my aunt. She has no other children, no spouse, so I'm it. And I do a lot for her. And it's very, very hard. But knowing that she has advanced directives and she's provided me with information for her future, I don't have to make a guess or make a decision. Although I'm very skilled at doing so, when you're the loved one, it's emotional. So no matter how much education you have or training, certainly it is still a heavy conversation and it's hard when you love the person. So just make sure you advocate for yourself. No matter how old you are, your wishes are still honored and you can change that MOLST, you can change those advanced directives and they should be exactly what you want them to be. Yes, I'm not sure, I'm sorry, if it will be on Carroll Lutheran, maybe, Kristen, you can answer that. Thank you so much. Oh, great, Kristen, it will. Awesome. And then don't forget that these documents are a gift to yourself and your loved ones. I said it, but I can't say it enough. And I said this earlier, and I'm going to reiterate this. Studies show that it reduces grief and depression when they know they are carrying out your wishes. They do. And it's an important thing to consider. So these are actually some resources for you, and not everybody's good with the computer. I get it. You saw me at the beginning, trying to figure everything out. So, if you have a loved one or somebody who's really good with the computer, they can actually look at this. The MarylandMolst.org is an actual link to all information about the Maryland MOLST, even a copy of it if you're interested, the summary form. And if you see the link below, it's all the information that they provide to consumers that are you, the consumers, the people who need the Maryland MOLST, who want to fill it out, all the information you would need. There's news casts on there. There's PowerPoints, there's articles, there's everything you need to know to understand the MOLST. So this is another good reference for you. And then also some people, want to know, like, I don't want to worry about carrying a piece of paper around. Is there something else I can do? There are bracelets, kind of like a diabetes bracelet, knowing you have diabetes, there are DNR bracelets. So, no matter what you're wearing this, they recognize that you would not want to be resuscitated. And if you're comfortable wearing a bracelet, certainly that's an option. And I can imagine there's other options at this point as well that you can look into. This is one of my favorite projects that I've stumbled upon during my career. It's called the Conversation Project. The Conversation Project should be called the Conversations Project because these conversations aren't just one time. Absolutely not. We sometimes have them multiple times before we come to a conclusion of what we would want on our advanced directive or our MOLST. And so I've got this link for you so you can look at it. They have a whole, again, news story on it that you can read and see how families come together. And I've also given you this, which you can provide to yourself or your family. And it's called a starter guide. It actually is a conversation starter guide. How do I even start talking about this stuff? This is heavy. How do I even start having this conversation? Well, this is a guide to help you start having this conversation. And I think it would be very helpful for you all to utilize this if you felt that it was difficult for you to start and you didn't know where to start. So I hope that you find this helpful. And again, these are also, although I've provided these documents, they should be uploaded. MarylandAttorneyGeneral.gov. This is actually a website where all the advanced directive information is in the state of Maryland. These are where the free advanced directives are, all information about advanced directives. I also put the quick link for the actual advanced directives, which again, I provided for you. And if you see at the bottom, it also talks about, it actually is the document and the Healthcare Decisions Act, which is the law that oversees Maryland, which I can tell you is something that takes you years to learn, but it is interesting. And some of you might be interested in reading it. So I didn't want to omit that information. And then this is also some references as well. If you're interested, some of them are repeated. This is actually a wonderful guy who has helped me learn about the law and healthcare decision policy. And he is very lovely and will answer your questions if you have any, specifically about the document, about the validity of the document. So I thought he was a good reference as well. He's awesome. And I know I gave you a lot of information today. I hope that you took something away, and I so appreciate you having me here. And I will take questions now if you have any. Yes, yes. You should keep the MOLST with you all the time. Absolutely. No matter where you are traveling in Maryland or out of the country, they might not recognize the MOLST, but what they're trying to do, I'm guessing, is this Mr. or Mrs. Swift? What they're trying to do is get every state in the United States of America to have a similar form. Sometimes they're MOLST, sometimes they're the POLST. It doesn't matter. It's not Maryland orders, it's medical orders. So other states have the MOLST. Some states have the POLST. Pennsylvania has the POLST, but it's not Pennsylvania orders. It is physician orders for life-sustaining treatment. So they're similar in nature, but there's a kind of a different title to them. And so we're hoping that the United States of America will recognize these forms throughout the country. Right now, I think about 25 people, listen to me, 25 states-ish have these documents. They're hoping to consider having every. So, and continuity is very important, but always have that information with you because we want to make sure that your wishes are being honored. And thank you, Dale. Thanks for being here. Any other questions? I'm here to answer. And of course, if questions come up, I am available. I did give my phone number to, I think it was Becca, and I will be happy to answer any questions that you have anytime. So if you don't have any further questions, I'm sorry. So that we should keep the MOLST in our car. Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's a great idea. Absolutely. And sometimes they say like there's, you can fold it up and put it in your wallet. You can put it in your car. You know, if God forbid you were in your bed, some people say put it behind your bed, behind your door when someone comes in, on your refrigerator, things like that. So, and I bet at Carroll Lutheran, they can give you some good ideas as to how that works in their facility specifically, if that makes sense. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you so much for having me. And I hope that I was able to give you information that helps you. And Becca, I can turn it over to you.
Hello, hi everyone. I am Becca Ruby and I am a sales associate at Carroll Lutheran Village. First, I want to thank Joanna for her wonderful presentation. Like many of you, I was somewhat familiar with the Maryland MOLST form, but I was not aware of all the specific details, especially how the MOLST form differs from the advanced directives. I hope you found Joanna's presentation as informative and useful as I did. To conclude, we want to emphasize that Carroll Lutheran Village is a full-service senior living community. Please know that our healthcare operations continue to follow the CDC and state directives, but we want everyone to know that we welcome you to tour our community. So please feel free to contact either Chris Spicer or myself at 410-848-8922. Thank you for spending time with us today, and take care. Have a pleasant afternoon.
Thank you, Chris and Becca and Joanna. And thank you again, Carroll Lutheran Village, for sponsoring today. I did put the link for the very quick survey into the chat. Please just copy and paste that into a browser. And again, we appreciate any feedback about today's program. We look forward to seeing you again. Thanks again, Carroll Lutheran Village. Have a wonderful week and take care.